Welcome to the season of traditions. Traditions have drawn us together for many centuries before you or I were born. Every family has a unique tradition followed every year that each member looks forward to. We each value traditions for a variety of reasons, whether because they remind us of home, or because they make us comfortable, or perhaps because they keep us close to our culture. In 2016, a group of researchers from various disciplines from prestigious universities collaborated on a paper titled "Don't Stop Believing: Rituals Improve Performance by Decreasing Anxiety," found through both case study and self-report that rituals and traditions both reduce anxiety. That's a great reason for us all to keep up our traditions. So as members of different families, cultures, ethnicities, and beliefs, we all have experience in performing within and observing traditions. We'll be talking about our experiences with the following traditions: football traditions at the University of Michigan, college traditions, county fairs, and quinceañeras. Before we kick off to our first tradition, let's define tradition. Tradition is a complex word, meaning that it can take on many different meanings and definitions for a myriad of different situations. In our context, Thomas Green wrote in Volume 1 of the 1997 book titled Folklore, an encyclopedia of beliefs, customs, tales, music, and art, that tradition is something that is passed down from one generation to the next, generally by informal means. All right, so we're just about a month away from the nation's greatest rivalry, and Mac is just the person to inform us about our first tradition, football traditions at the University of Michigan. Take it away.
What does a banner, a block M, and Fritz Chrysler all have in common? At first, you may think they have nothing in common at all. But when you take a closer look, all of these things are traditions at the University of Michigan's football team. Today we pay tribute to the idea of tradition, and in doing so, my speech will pay tribute to the idea of tradition by looking at traditions of Michigan's football team. Everyone has some sort of tradition in their life, whether it be a holiday tradition, a family tradition, or etc. Since this area is mostly filled with Ohio State fans, it could be useful to know more about their biggest rival, Michigan. Through my research, I have the information and sources that show various traditions of Michigan football. Today I'm going to explain 3 different traditions: the banner, the block M, and Fritz Chrysler. Now that I've told you what I'm going to cover overall, let's take a look at our first tradition, the banner. Each home game begins the same way if you're a Michigan football player. Exactly 10 minutes before kickoff, a giant banner is unveiled across the 50-yard line in Michigan Stadium. It is a 30 by 5-foot banner that reads, "Go Blue, M Club supports you." As the team exits the locker room, they run down the tunnel onto the field and jump up to hit the banner as they go under it before 110,000 adoring fans. According to Sam Webb of mgoblue.com in 2017, the banner has been a staple at Michigan football games since 1962. The Alumni Club first used a 6-foot wide strip of fabric that year, and the rest is history. To this day, every player and coach since 1962 has run beneath that banner, which signifies support from the alumni to the current team. In addition to the M Club banner, another tradition at Michigan is to guard the giant block M outside the stadium when rival Michigan State comes to town. The year was 1975. Both teams came into the game undefeated and everything to play for. The night before the game, students from Michigan State snuck onto Michigan's campus and spray painted the giant block M outside of Michigan Stadium green and white, which are their school colors. Since that fateful day, a new tradition was born. According to Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com in 2010, during the week leading up to the Michigan State-Michigan game, students guard the block M outside of the stadium to thwart any vandalism attempts by opposing fans. According to Martin Slegter of mlive.com in 2017, students camp out on top of the block M Monday through Saturday of game week. Finally, the last tradition that I want to cover is perhaps the most unique: Fritz Chrysler's seat. That extra seat had no significance of any kind. It wasn't a special seat in any special spot, a reporter once asked Chrysler. "It has a spot," he said, "and I'm the only man who knows where that spot is." Fritz Chrysler leaned back against a goalpost and gazed around the stadium and down the snow-covered field. He smiled and shook his head. According to Michael Florek of the Michigan Daily in 2011, when Michigan Stadium was renovated in 1956, Chrysler, the athletic director at the time, put in one extra seat in a location only he knew. Ever since that renovation in 1956, the stadium's capacity always ended in a 1 for Chrysler's seat. Today, the capacity is 111,201 seats. At halftime of every game, a fan is picked at random as that day's Chrysler seat and is refunded the cost of their ticket. Although this tradition may seem simple, it is a unique way for the program to give back to its fans. To wrap up my portion of today's discussion, we looked at 3 traditions of Michigan football: the banner, the Block M, and Fritz Chrysler's seat. Each one embodies the idea of tradition because each is a unique representation that links to the past. In a world that is constantly changing and evolving, traditions remain the same. They provide us with ways to interact with other like-minded people, and they offer a way to look back in time. As Jonah Goldberg of the National Review Online once said, cultures grow on the vine of tradition.
Thank you, Mac. There are lots of things associated with football traditions at the University of Michigan. Speaking of universities, Beth is going to carry us along by talking about college traditions in general. Traditions in college are a great way to create a sense of community among students on campus. She'll also tell us about how college traditions create memories. Traditions on campus can also tell us how students celebrate ideals through rituals. Tell us more, Beth.
If you can imagine for a moment walking across a college campus and seeing frozen pumpkins or even a grand piano tossed off a 6-story building, or a funeral procession for a rat, or the sight of a celebratory walk through an arch, or maybe a student pausing and walking around an arch for superstition, you may wonder how these actions are connected to enhancing education or celebrating ideals. As someone who's attended several colleges and taught at them, as well as supported my family and others, I've come to learn and appreciate a variety of college traditions that not only help create a sense of belonging, the traditions help transform students. College traditions vary as much as students themselves. Many rituals start as a response to a single situation and often continue throughout years, decades, and even centuries as the values of tradition in college bind students together, celebrate ideals, and create memories. So I'd like to spend a moment telling you a story of how students at Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. have built a tradition that binds students together and enhances their sense of community. Most of the population of the university is hearing impaired, so there's already a unique sense of camaraderie. However, the freshmen of the class are referred to as RADs, a throwback term that began when the students were first labeled as they came up from prep school, but evolved to encompass all freshmen. How the tradition binds students together and builds a sense of community. For decades, students at Gallaudet have held a rat funeral to mark the end of the freshman year. Originally, students used real dead rats in the burial, but now use stuffed ones. According to H.D. Malman, author of Signing the Body Poetic, traditions like the rat burial carry subconscious cultural messages linking the past to the present. The author likens the rat burial ritual for students at the university to the culture of American baseball and the players who realize they are part of and feel a connection to past players. Not only do traditions bind people together, they help celebrate ideals and principles as students grow into adults. Tradition through rituals help celebrate ideals and principles. Professor of American Studies at Pennsylvania State University, Simon Bronner, stresses that college rituals are not just silly celebrations. Rather, he states that traditions and rituals are important coming-of-age events, and explains that context has shifted from what he calls the old-time college, small in size and strong in community, to mass society's mega universities, a behemoth that extends beyond any campus to multiple branches and offshoots throughout a state or region, and sometimes even the globe. Also, Bronner says that the experience of higher ed education precariously spans from childhood to adulthood, parental and societal authority, home incorporation, and even play and work. MIT students have several annual traditions like the pumpkin plummet and an unscheduled tuition riot that is held as a peaceful march when the college raises tuition. As students benefit from community and linked ideals, traditions also create special memories. The last story I want to tell you about is the one of a special University of Findlay student named Caddy Griffith, who graduated from the University of Findlay almost 110 years ago. Caddy was known for her wit and intelligence, her good looks, and for being a star on the women's basketball team. The University of Findlay website notes that she went on to become the head of the English department from 1914 to 1918. 100 years ago, she died tragically at a very young age from a stomach flu. Her family commissioned the arch that stands outside of Old Main in her memory. Students who walk under the arch may not know about Caddy, or that in 1990 the arch was rebuilt and moved back to allow more students to walk through during graduation. The college changed its name in 1989, so the side facing the oldest building, Old Main, reads Findlay College, and the new side bears the name of the university now. Students may not know about Caddy, but her family created a special memory for students at the university of walking through the arch on their first and their last day, and maybe avoiding walking through the arch for fear of bad luck in between. Either way, Caddy's memory is now a part of their memory too, through tradition. Tradition, like those we experience through college life, and are part of the building blocks that bind us together and solidify our ideals. And they are also the linking rings that connect us to past and future generations.
Thank you, Beth. One of the traditions those of us here at the University of Findlay have experienced is the hustle and bustle of the county fair. Andrew is going to tell us a little bit about what goes on at county fairs and their connection to agriculture. He's also going to inform us that they're more than fun and competitions, they're essential to communities. Additionally, and if you've been to more than one, you might have noticed some differences. Each community makes their fair unique. Take it away, Andrew.
Picture this. You walk into a dirty, dusty street, and you hear the sounds of a cow mooing in the distance. You take a sniff, and you smell corn dogs being cooked on the fairway. And you can hear the sound of a merry-go-round and children laughing and singing. These sounds and many others are part of the county fair experience. County fairs predate communities more than any other festival or activity that we know today. In fact, writing in the Santa Maria Times, the opinion editor of the Times talks about how fairs began thousands of years ago, usually as a means of village dwellers gathering to show or to trade produce or other goods. And it was also very common in those days for villagers to bring their cows, their goats, and their chickens to fairs, hoping for a trade or to get something of equal value. And while those traditions may have lapsed in certain parts of the country, today the county fair exists as a way to showcase that which is part of the community. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about county fairs and talk about how they are more than just showcases for the community, but rather an insight into the soul of a community. If you've been to a county fair here in the state of Ohio, you'll notice that many of them are of the agricultural variety. As a matter of fact, agriculture is first and foremost in many county fairs here in the state of Ohio, primarily because agriculture is the driving force that connects most of the counties together. The county fair system in Ohio is connected through the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and the Ohio Department of Agriculture oversees, save for about 5 different fairs held in the state of Ohio, oversees each and every county fair. So when you go to a particular county and go to a fair, you know that the Ohio Department of Agriculture is one of the main organizing, functioning factors involved in that fair. And while many fairs have very similar activities, each one is different in its own way. My own hometown county fair, the Hardin County Fair, showcases a lot of agricultural type projects, usually done through the purposes of 4-H or FFA students. These agricultural showcases demonstrate cows, beef steers or dairy feeders, market lambs, which I have some background in, chickens, ducks, poultry, and lately, a lot of turkey projects. And what you see when you go to each one of these fairs is how is agriculture operating in this particular county, and how does it operate in the state of Ohio as a whole? When I was younger, beef steers were the main driving factor because in those days, beef was a major money-making project. Today, given the high cost of inputs in agriculture, beef is not exactly as profitable. And we find many students are taking poultry, hogs, and other types of objects to the county fair. But let's say that you're not necessarily a farmer. Let's say that you are joining the fair as a way of just talking about projects that are going on in the community. Well, Of course, 4-H and FFA students can participate in county fairs by showcasing photography, riflery projects, public speaking, and all kinds of different things that you can participate in as a youth member. County fairs are important because they help to demonstrate exactly how a community can be connected. In addition to the kind of projects that are judged on and showed, people can trade goods. Businesses in a particular community can set up shop and meet with potential clients. They usually offer specials of some kind or another. And when that happens, these particular clients can make sales, can make connections, can make memories. One of the things that I have discovered over my years in covering county fairs as a reporter and also as a participant is that many times you will find that you run into people who you would not normally see any other time of the year. Because we all have our own lives and our own way of doing things, we don't necessarily connect on an everyday basis. But you can connect by visiting the county fair. And then when I've gone to my county fair, I've often met individuals who I have not seen in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, but they are home for the county fair. I've gone to county fairs across the state of Ohio, and when I have gone, I have always looked for what is unique for that particular community. At the Henry County Fair, I discovered that back in the day, they used to have a 4-H marching band who would perform at their particular fair every single year. In Clark County, the home of 4-H, a lot of agricultural products are showcased not only by the youth themselves, but also by the various commodity organizations in that particular community. And because that's where 4-H was born, they really focus on the 4-H aspect of their county fair. The Ohio State Fair, of course, is not a county fair, also not necessarily organized by the Ohio Department of Agriculture, but it too showcases the best that the state has to offer. One of the things that I constantly get struck by when it comes to covering and visiting and just taking in a county fair is how it really provides you insight into the soul of a community. This is the best a community has to offer, and they showcase it at the county fair. Writing from the Michigan State Department of Department of Agriculture, their extension service, Roxanne Turner describes county fairs as a way to help kids learn youth development. Through 4-H projects, youth may learn leadership as they take on roles within their club, such as a club officer or a chair in a committee. And they may learn empathy or understanding as they learn about others' challenges or about youth from another part of the community. They can learn teamwork and character building as they work together through their club toward common goals. And those common goals become the competitions that are held at the county fair. Every county fair is unique, every county fair is different, but every county fair does have one contributing factor, and that is that they are the soul of a community. So when you visit a county fair, keep that in mind, and also keep in mind that there's a lot of people that work really hard to ensure that the fair is a success each and every year.
Thank you, Andrew. Like county fairs, how La Fiesta de Quinceaños or quinceañeras is celebrated depends on where you go. Alejandra will tell us more about the quinceañeras tradition today. She will tell us a little bit more about the history of the coming-of-age ceremony, how the party is celebrated, including how the father of the quinceañera presents her with her first pair of high heels, and about how the relevance of the tradition is to her life. Let's listen to Alejandra.
I want you to think back to a time when your face hurt from smiling too much. Perhaps you won an award, or you were at your graduation party. The time that comes to my mind is when I had my quinceañera. Today, I will be talking about a few different traditions within the quinceañera celebration. It is important to learn about this birthday celebration because learning about traditions in other cultures can make us more culturally aware. I've done extensive research into the topic of quinceañera traditions, and I have also had one myself. In this speech, I will talk about what a quinceañera is and the history of quinceañeras, and a few traditions within the quinceañera such as the dress, the changing of the shoe, and the last doll. To understand what a quinceañera is, I must describe it in terms you'll understand. A quinceañera is very similar to a sweet 16 or a bat mitzvah in the Jewish culture. Imagine this. You see a girl walking down the aisle in a white dress, but you think to yourself, she looks too young to be getting married, so why is she in a white dress? She's actually celebrating her 15th birthday, which is more commonly known as a quinceañera. According to dictionary.com, A quinceañera is defined as, among Hispanics and Latin American in the U.S., a celebration of a girl's 15th birthday, marking her transition from childhood to maturity. However, Britannica defines a quinceañera as Spanish, meaning 15 years, also called quinceaños or quince años, or simply quince, the celebration of a girl's 15th birthday, marking her passage from girlhood to womanhood. The term is also used for the celebrant herself. Britannica, the editors of encyclopedia. The definitions are quite similar in that the girl is turning into a woman, except that Britannica offers a more descriptive definition. It goes on to say that although the quince observance originally signified that the girl was prepared for marriage, the modern celebration is more likely to signal the beginning of formal dating. According to an article titled 13 Important Quinceañera Traditions published by Fun Attic, a girl was considered ready for marriage at the age of 15 among the Aztec Indians. This celebration sprung up as a result of this important age. Parents were supposed to beseech their girls now turned women to become good, outstanding wives in the future. The dress can be any color, but the traditional colors of the dress or gown are white or light pink. However, this same article says it's tricky to use any other color apart from white in some parts where the color white may be valued as a color that symbolizes purity and virginity. It was hard for me to choose a color for my dress because I didn't have a favorite color and I didn't like pink, so I went with the traditional color of white. You can't talk about the dress without talking about the shoes. On the day of my quinceañera, my dad had the role of changing my shoes. This is another important tradition that has a lot of symbolism behind it. According to an article titled 10 Quinceañera Traditions published by Jane McGrath, another popular tradition is the changing of the shoes. In this ritual, one of the parents will take off the quinceañera's flats and replace them with elegant heels. This is the quinceañera's first pair of heels, representing her growth and maturity. According to the previous article titled 13 Important Quinceañera Traditions, the shoes are a symbol of growth and responsibility on the girl's part. They are also a sort of symbolism for the girl stepping up in society to become an adult woman. According to an article titled Quinceañera Tradition published on the Quinceañera Boutique, the changing of the shoes is a most popular tradition. The father or favored male relative ceremoniously changes the young girl's flats, shoes to high heels. This is a beautiful symbol of the quinceañera's transformation from a little girl to a young lady. On the day of my quinceañera, my dad switched my white flats into a pair of bedazzled white high heels, and it was funny because he doesn't like feet at all. The last tradition I wanted to mention was the last doll. When I was younger, I always had stuffed animals and dolls. One specific stuffed animal I had was Mr. Walrus. He was a silver walrus, and I would brush his mustache with a comb. The last tradition I will mention is the tradition of the last doll. At a quinceañera, a girl is given a doll that looks like her. However, the doll isn't a stuffed doll. It's a porcelain doll made of glass. According to an article titled Learn More About the Quinceañera Last Doll Tradition, published by Alicia Monslave, it is a custom that the quinceañera receives her last doll from her father in some Mexican traditions. The doll is usually made out of porcelain, but some quinceañeras also opt for Barbies or dolls as their last toy. This doll symbolizes her transition into adulthood, as her last toy she will play with. According to an article titled Last Doll, published by the Quinceañera Boutique, in some customs, the young lady receives the last doll as her last childhood gift. In other customs, the quinceañera doll represents the last things of a child now that the quinceañera will focus on the things of a young lady. And to symbolize this, the quinceañera passes on her last doll to a younger sibling. Although my dress was white, my porcelain doll was in a purple dress, and I still have it to this day. Although this is my last tradition I will mention, there are many more traditions and symbolism with the quinceañera tradition. Today, I talked about what a quinceañera was, the history, and the traditions with the dress, changing of the shoes, and the last doll. Although my face hurt during my quinceañera, it was well worth the pain because it made my birthday more memorable.
Thank you, Alejandra. Now that we're all thoroughly in the spirit of the season of traditions, let's review what our experts on their individual traditions talked about. Mac informed us about the football traditions at the University of Michigan. He told us a little bit about the Block M, the banner, and also a little bit about that number 1C of Mr. Chrysler. He told us a little bit about the Michigan rivalry as well. He also told us about some of the events that will happen with each football season. Beth told us about college traditions in general. She informed us about college traditions and how they bind students together and create a sense of community. College traditions create memories. She ended her speech by telling us that students celebrate ideals through rituals. Andrew took us to the county fairs. He discussed the fair's greater connection to agriculture. Furthermore, Andrew told us about how they're yearly staples in many communities which hold traditional contests. Each community puts their own traditional spin on fairs to make them unique. Alejandra told us about quinceañeras and what quinceañeras means. She told us about the history of quinceañeras, including, of course, what they mean and their significance to her. After the history, she told us about the dresses, the relevance to her own life, and also the changing of the shoe and the doll. We would love to hear about what you do during the season of traditions. It's what ties us all together, after all. Let's make new traditions together.